The calm of Sunday morning in rural Nova Scotia pierced by sirens. The chase for a gunman who left untold devastation in his wake. When it ended, he was dead, and so were at least 16 others, including an RCMP officer, leaving families and communities shattered.
2 children have lost their mother, and a husband has lost his wife.
A national tragedy in the middle of a global crisis. Good evening, I'm Ian Hannamansing. Tonight, extensive coverage of the Nova Scotia shootings, how the tragedy unfolded, the victims lost, the communities grieving, and the RCMP commissioner with the latest.
We have multiple scenes spreading over at least 50 kilometers, buildings, vehicles.
Plus, what we've learned about the man responsible for the deadliest mass shooting in Canadian history. This is The National.
They got him on lockdown. They're going for him right now. They got the killer right here. Oh, they got him, but they shot him. I heard the 4 shots.
This video appears to capture the dramatic final confrontation between police and the gunman. After his 12-hour shooting spree killed at least 16 people, including a veteran police officer, and left traumatic aftershocks in this quiet part of the country, where families have known each other for generations and even leave doors unlocked. Tonight, we'll share everything we know about the senseless act, now the deadliest mass shooting in Canadian history. We'll look at the lives lost and the shooter whose actions have left several communities devastated. It all began in Portapique, about 90 minutes north of Halifax. People in and around that community still reeling in shock tonight, as are residents of Enfield, where it finally ended. Tom Murphy begins our coverage with a look at what happened and when.
It all started with multiple firearm calls at a Portapique house down this country road.
Several casualties inside and outside of the home. This was a very quickly evolving situation and a chaotic scene.
That was around 11:30 p.m. on Saturday. Minutes later, police ordered people in the Portapique area to lock themselves in their homes. Nearby resident Mike McKay saw the police cars coming and several buildings burning.
You know, you're on edge. It's a small community. You know, and thinking, well, you know, if they do cross the river, I haven't slept.
By morning, police released the shooter's name and picture. Neighbors are shocked to learn it's the normally mild-mannered Gabriel Wortman. Police reported there are several victims. Around 9:45 a.m., CBC learned of another house fire, this time north of Portapique in the community of Wentworth. Police aren't offering any details on that. Shortly after 10 a.m., police warned Wortman is on the move again, making his way in the direction of Halifax. He was spotted in the Brookfield area wearing what appeared to be an RCMP uniform and driving what looked to be a police cruiser, a mock-up. Wortman had no RCMP affiliation. Police described him as armed and dangerous.
The fact that this individual had a uniform and a police car at his disposal certainly speaks to it not being a random act.
Video surfaced on social media appearing to show police cars on fire in the Shubenacadie area. It also appears to show officers approaching the vehicles. Then, just before noon, police warned the public Wortman was now driving a silver Chevy Tracker SUV. Darcy Sack said she saw him.
We did not realize that was him until we saw 4 police cars behind him. He was dressed looking like a police officer himself. He looked he was okay, to be honest. Like, he didn't look like he was in any type of rush. He didn't look like he was worried.
Moments later, police said they had cornered Wortman at an Irving Big Stop in Enfield, 12 hours after and 92 kilometers away from where it seems to have all begun. Tom Murphy, CBC News, Halifax.
One of the things missing in this story tonight is the names of the 15 civilians who were killed, victims of the deadliest mass shooting in Canada. Officials still haven't made those names public, and tonight, people in and around Portapique are struggling to find out even the most basic information. Shayna Luck is there.
This morning, Dave Brown was sheltering in his home, but by the afternoon, his grief brought him outside to display his heart on his sleeve.
when stuff like this happens, we got to rally together as people, loved ones in the community, and just show everybody that, bad things happen, but we're still good people out there, right?
This tiny seaside community holds only about 100 people, a smattering of houses on the northern shore of the Bay of Fundy. But deep in the night, people on this quiet road woke to see things they never expected. An armored police car, officers with guns drawn, racing in every direction. And across the bay, something unsettling.
Pretty large house fires, yes. And some explosions, gas tanks or propane tanks and what have you.
The RCMP have lost one officer. Another is injured. The dead officer is Constable Heidi Stevenson, a 23-year veteran of the force.
2 children have lost their mother, and a husband has lost his wife. Parents have lost their daughter, and countless others lost an incredible friend and colleague.
Details about victims are still emerging, and some are still waiting to find out if their loved ones were caught up in the gunman's rampage.
Words cannot or console the families affected by what has transpired over the last 24 hours.
Back in Portapique, the community is reeling. They aren't even sure who among their neighbors is dead.
If it's the lady who we think it is, like I've met her a couple times, and always walking around with a smile on her face every time I seen her, and it's real. It's saddening, very saddening.
People in Portapique are going to have to wait a bit longer for answers. Police said this afternoon they are just at the beginning of a long and complicated investigation. There's also a secondary investigation by the agency that steps in whenever someone is injured or killed during police activity. Shayna Lux, CBC News, Portapique, Nova Scotia.
There are many questions about the gunman. We know he was familiar to people in the area, but no one seems to know what his motive could possibly be. And among the mysteries, why he tried to pass himself off as a police officer. Kayla Hounsell has been putting together a fuller picture.
Hello, my name is Gabriel Wortman. I'm a licensed insurance here in the province of Nova Scotia.
51-year-old Gabriel Wortman is also the man police say went on a 12-hour shooting spree, killing at least 16 people.
I can't really wrap my head around it, so I'm waiting.
Cheryl Tilden was one of his patients at his Dartmouth clinic, where she says his wife also worked.
He treated me like family. Him and his wife were joking around all the time. Made you feel great. By the time I left there, I was in a better mood.
I interviewed Wortman for another network in 2014 over dentures that he had donated.
He, was known for his bike. And
Loretta Parley went to high school with a Gabriel Wortman. She says this is his yearbook photo.
He spoke in his high school biography about wanting to be an RCMP. It was briefly in passing how every typical teenager talks about, what they want to do once they're out of school. And that was what he had mentioned, being a police officer.
Today, the RCMP didn't provide any information about Wortman's motivation, whether he was known to police or the relationship to his victims, except that some of them appeared to be chosen randomly.
I'm sorry, due to privacy reasons, I'm not able to discuss the relationship with the victims, other than to say there were some that appeared not to have a relationship with the assailant, the shooter.
All of it is so hard to believe for Cheryl Tilden.
Honestly, if he would have showed up at my door without knowing any of this, I would have just invited him in.
RCMP confirm Wortman is now dead. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
So as you saw, Nova Scotia RCMP addressing the media this evening, and here's a bit more of what was sometimes an emotional news conference.
Today is a devastating day for Nova Scotia, and it will remain etched in the minds of many for years to come. What has unfolded overnight and into this morning is incomprehensible, and many families are experiencing the loss of a loved one. That includes our own RCMP family. It's with tremendous sadness that I share with you that we have lost Constable Heidi Stevenson, a 23-year veteran of the force, who was killed this morning while responding to an active shooter incident. Heidi answered the call of duty and lost her life while protecting those she served. Earlier this afternoon, I met with Heidi's family, and there are no words to describe their pain. 2 children have lost their mother, and a husband has lost his wife. Parents have lost their daughter, and countless others lost an incredible friend and colleague. This tragic incident has also resulted in many victims outside of the RCMP. Countless families are in mourning today. Each person who lost their family and friend, and they too will need their support. The impact of this incident will extend from one end of the province to the other. As Nova Scotians, we have to do what we're known for and come together in times of need and support each other.
And the RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki joins us now from Ottawa. Commissioner Lucki, our condolences on this terrible day in Nova Scotia. What's your message for your members and for Canadians?
My heart is broken today, not only for the loss of our member and one of our members being injured, but for the entire province of Nova Scotia, because it's not just the RCMP family. We're part of a bigger family in each community, and so the entire province is going to be grieving, and my heart goes out to them.
The number of people killed, staggering, obviously. What little we're hearing about the circumstances also is hard to imagine in any place, but especially in rural Nova Scotia. What can you tell us about what this gunman apparently did?
Well, I can tell you it started again last night around just after 10, after multiple 911 calls, and we have multiple scenes spreading over at least 50 kilometers, buildings, vehicles.
One of your senior officers in Nova Scotia said that some of the victims here were apparently chosen at random. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I would say I believe at the beginning there was an initial motivation, and then I think it turned to randomness, and our investigation will tell that. We don't know for sure, and we're going to have to do a lot of work on finding the motivation, a lot of background, a lot of profiling type events, and a lot of crime scene processing.
We want to be careful, of course, to separate rumor from fact, but I know there are emails going among law enforcement officials across the country, police officers, and I saw one where one officer describes what he knows about this as pure evil. Does that line up with what you know about what happened here?
Anytime we lose a life, it's one too many lives, and until we find out exactly what happened, it's hard to describe it. I just know it's just a big, huge tragedy for our country today, and there's no words to describe it.
And the task force the RCMP is part of that investigates potential terror attacks, is it involved in the investigation here at all?
No, we're using our resources that we have on the ground that will be supplemented by subject matter experts in the forensics and probably in the profiling area, and doing our general investigation as a murder, multiple murders, and we'll be using all types of resources, whatever it takes, so that we can give the families of the victims answers to the many questions that they probably have.
But just seconds left here, just to clarify, you don't believe that this is terror-related then?
Not to our knowledge, not at this point.
Okay. Commissioner Lucki, a difficult day, of course, for Nova Scotians, for Canadians, and certainly for the RCMP. Thanks for speaking with us.
Thank you.
And there has been reaction from across the country. Anita Bath has been gathering that in our Vancouver newsroom. Anita?
Ian, the news of this tragedy is emotional for people everywhere in Canada. In a statement, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he's saddened to learn about the senseless violence. Every day, law enforcement members put themselves in harm's way to ensure our safety and well-being. As a country, in moments like these, we come together to support one another. Together, we will mourn with the families of the victims and help them get through this difficult time. Canada's Governor General says she is devastated by the shootings.
Our heart goes out to the family of Constable Stevenson. I reached out to some of the RCMP officers that work with me day in and day out. It's a big family, and we feel terrible with this loss of life. We don't have any details. My condolences to all those affected.
Here in BC, we are far away, but I can tell you the details of what's happened have hit home. Premier John Horgan calling it a senseless attack, adding the hearts of British Columbians are with all the victims. But really, Ian, we have a whole country standing with Nova Scotians tonight. Many are heartbroken, knowing how hard it will be to mourn the victims under this time of physical distancing and COVID-19.
All right, Anita, thank you. This is an unimaginable tragedy for the communities affected. More murders in one day than Nova Scotia experienced in all of 2018. These are rural areas where everyone knows their neighbor. And as two local politicians tell us, they're now struggling to understand how this could happen just outside their homes.
People live here because they feel safe and secure in a nice little rural community where everybody kind of, for the most part, knows everybody. And I think that they're shocked, and I don't think we really know what to think. It's just unbelievable that this can happen in any rural community in Nova Scotia. It would be different, I'll tell you that right now. There's a lot of people around here probably don't lock their doors. They've lived here all their life. They leave a whatever sitting out on the side of the road. There's no concern. We talk about COVID being a new life. This is a new life, new reality for us right today.
Well, you hear that kind of news and you don't even imagine that could happen here in this province in a rural area. You think it might happen in big cities somewhere, but not here. Communities are so tightly knit that this kind of a devastation hits everybody. It's not just that community that's affected. It affects all of us now. I hope as community members, they're going to maybe make a phone call, send an email, a card, anything that lets that family know that they're not going to go through this alone. The whole community is there for them.
So what will the impact of these horrific murders be in a place usually so quiet and friendly? Tom Murphy is the host of CBC News Nova Scotia. He knows the Maritimes inside out. And Tom, as you covered this story today, you were speaking to people. What did you hear?
Yeah, I talked to a number of people in Portapique where this all started, absolutely gobsmacked about what could happen, that could happen in their community. They knew this guy as a good community guy, a friendly guy. I mean, you think about it, this guy was a denturist who quite literally put smiles on people's faces, empowered them, made them feel better about themselves with the denture work. Here we have a guy who's brought an unbelievable amount of fear and grief and really concern to their community. They just cannot put together the two personalities involved here. Absolutely floored by what happened today.
Yeah, and we were hoping maybe we'd get some clarity in that news conference this evening, but still, even the RCMP says that they don't fully understand or even understand at all the motive. Six years ago, Tom, those horrific RCMP murders in Moncton, you covered those. Are you seeing a parallel in terms of the impact on the community?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those first times in this part of the country, which is normally very quiet on this kind of a thing, when people felt that fear, for hours at a time. That same kind of fear was felt in Nova Scotia for a 12-hour period here today and last night. Also, of course, the loss of innocence. That's what comes next. People laugh. I was saying today, people like to sleep with their windows open and the doors unlocked in many parts of Nova Scotia. Some people questioning that now, whether that is the thing to do. Just really trying to come to grips with what happened, and this will take days for them to dissect it. And really, some of the families too, some of them on Facebook, for example, people who are living afar, trying to find out, has anyone seen my parents? My parents live on this part and this part of the community. Did you see them? So there are still a lot of ripples to this whole story that's happening right now. It's really painful to watch it play out.
And so much more to find out. And I know you and Kayla will be leading our coverage in the coming days. Tom, thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
We'll check in with the other news of the day next. And still ahead, more on this devastating day in Nova Scotia.